Up with Wolf Bronsky. I'm Wolf Bronsky, and here's what's up. We are joined again by Jared Presswidge, the creator of Howie the Hellhound, or the writer. Um, and we're going to talk to you today about some other comics that if you've never read comics, you may be looking for, well, how do I get started writing or reading comics? Or maybe you want to write a comic and you'd like to know some good places to start and things you can read to get some ideas. Or maybe you just want some new ideas. Maybe you're tired of reading all the new Marvel and DC stuff. We've got a very like a broad selection of Jared's five top recommendations for people just starting out, and then my top five recommendations. And we're going to go back and forth and talk to you about why we like them and kind of get some of the ones that Jared's read. I have not read, and I don't know how many of the ones that I recommend he's read. So we'll be able to have a little conversation too. Jared, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited for this conversation because it is tricky getting into the world of comics for a lot of people, myself included, when I first started. So, yeah, this should be an interesting conversation. Hopefully,
Well,
helpful.
I am curious before we dive in. How did you first get started reading comics? Because as I recall, is a little bit different for you than for you weren't just diving in with Spider-Man or something.
No, definitely not. When I was a kid, I first read The Simpsons, just some random Simpsons comics, and once Star Wars was bought by Disney, I got in with that new series there that Jason Aaron did. So yeah, but from then on, I pretty much stuck to indies, so the Image Comics, the Dark Horse kind of thing. So yeah, like you said, our lists are quite different, so it should be an interesting conversation. Not necessarily my top five books of all time, but just the ones that I think that new readers could jump into without much trouble.
All right. Well, let's start with, and I mean, and you can tell us. I don't know if you had yours in a particular order. I don't wouldn't say I necessarily did, but uh, you'll kind of see the order as we go here. I'm sure you recognize this fella.
Yeah, this one's Sweet Tooth. I think this is probably my most recommended. I think for new readers. It's a Vertigo comic by Jeff Lemire. He wrote and drew it as well. So this book, it's pretty much I pretty much call it like a road trip. I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but I think the strengths of the book. I mean, it's all across the board, especially for new readers. I remember when I first picked it up, they released it in deluxes. I think three deluxes that come with about 12 issues per, and I feel like I flipped through that thing in maybe like 20 minutes and finished it. It was such a quick read, and that's I think it's a combination of the story being really easy to grasp onto, and the way it lays out its panels. So yeah, it really makes a good use of the page and doesn't overload you with too much information, and it gives you kind of a one point of interest to focus on through the whole story. So I think there's about 50 issues or so, and it just goes like that. I really recommend this book. What about you?
This
Have
is
you read
a,
it?
so I've not read it. I started the Netflix show,
Hmm.
um, and I think I started it like right before I canceled Netflix for some reason. It was a good show, but apparently not good enough to keep me from canceling Netflix at the time. Um, but and in fact, I've not really read much of Jeff Lemire in general, other than now, of course, I've been reading Absolute Flash, and he's doing great there. And it's been really interesting to see some of that. He's just a more unique storyteller than some of the people you would see maybe writing for DC. And so that's really got me thinking, well, gosh, maybe I need to go check that out and see what it's like. Would you when I read the when I was watching the show, it seemed like it was very bleak. How does it feel? What's the vibe as you're reading it? Uh, I lost you, Jared. What happened? Well, I'll say this. So the show, I really I don't remember what it was. I guess maybe I have seen so many post-apocalyptic shows these days. It's like Walking Dead wasn't the first one, but it feels to me like that's when all of a sudden Walking Dead gets going, and then it's just like every other show is set after the end of the world. So I didn't. I think maybe that was had something to do with why I got a little bit bummed by it and just wasn't able to stick. Let's see what we got here. I think we're gonna. It's not letting him back in. Gosh, guys, this is a real issue. We've got somebody. My technology is has turned. It's turned on Jared. And this is why I really think you just can't be too careful with AI. Um, because it's all similar at this point. AI is probably running everything behind the scenes, and I would imagine. I think there was some government influence within the context of the show Sweet Tooth. So I think what probably happened was the government saw we're talking about a show that had to do with maybe some of what they would consider subversive themes, and they said, you know what, um, let's shut it down. I think that's what. Oh, and here's Jared. Jared.
I don't know what happened there. Something's up with this app. It just doesn't want to accept my camera for some reason. I
Well,
don't know
what
whether
I
you
was
can see
thinking
me.
might have happened is, as I remember from watching the show, Sweet Tooth has a little bit of like maybe the government was involved in some of the things that happened, and I'm wondering if maybe the kind of like AI system that they've got watching over anything that anybody does everywhere maybe picked up on that. Maybe it was like a false positive, and they thought we were like subversive radicals or something like that, and so they probably knocked you off for that reason. Um,
Sure, we'll go with that.
yeah. I don't know why it's not wanting to let your camera be on here. What is?
Yeah, I
What
don't know.
is?
I just got a Surface Pro, so I mean, it's just a regular kind of laptop thing.
Well, the
Yeah,
show
now I
must
just
go on. We'll go. We'll.
it just says that I'm not being recorded either. So
Did you?
um,
Oh, wait. It said. Oh man, it gave me a. It told me. Okay, so here we are. We're back. We oh look, we got Bert here. Bert's in the audience. Um, it told me to try to do it in an incognito window.
mhm.
So maybe as we go, maybe we'll try that. But for the time being, our next comic is in the Energon universe, and I am just very feel very good about the Energon universe right now. I love the Absolute universe. I feel like the what I've read in the Ultimate universe, mainly Spider-Man and some of Ultimate Wolverine, has been really cool. But the Energon universe, I don't think that enough people are reading it. It is one of the best things going on right there right now, and Void Rivals is one of them. It's Robert Kirkman from Walking Dead and all these other, um, you know, at this point, there's like a million zombie shows thanks to Kirkman and Walking Dead. But this is nothing like that. It's not post-apocalyptic. It's set in this world where these two factions of people have been convinced that the other side, everybody is just hideous and terrible, and they all wear masks so they don't know what the other side actually looks like, and they're at war. And as it goes on, you kind of find out maybe they don't really need to be at war, um, or maybe they do, and there's some really huge uh, calamity that could befall the entire universe if they're not. Um, it's kind of hard to even get too far into it without spoilers, but it's very fun and it's got some humor in it. It's very different from Walking Dead, just in terms of the first of all, it's more sci-fi, like you know, spaceships and stuff than zombies, and it's a lot lighter and more humorous. Jared, have you heard anything about this? Is this even on your radar at all?
No, not really. Is this? I know that the Daniel Boren Johnson is doing Transformers. Is this pretty much that same
So
kind of
yeah,
thing?
so it's all tied in, or at least I should say it's very much the way the Absolute Universe is so far. You can read Absolute Batman and not keep up with Absolute Wonder Woman. You can read Absolute Flash and not Absolute Martian Manhunter. But there are definitely some things that are set out there that will connect. And in fact, they actually have done a better job of doing that than the Absolute Universe has. It almost seems like maybe the Absolute Universe is afraid that if they do that, they're going to get things going too quickly, which maybe that's a valid fear. But over at Image with this Skybound imprint, they have not been worried about that. So there are you know you'll see a transformer or you'll see there's a character I can't remember his name, but he's like this giant anthropomorphic armadillo, and he's from Transformers. So there's yeah, so it's definitely in that universe, and they've all just been really fun. There's some great characters. There's this crazy bad guy who's got this awesome suit, and then he's rides through the planet on this Tron looking motorcycle. It's a lot of fun, and that's kind of what I was thinking with most of these comics that I picked are ones where they're well written, they've got great art, and they're fun. You're gonna have a good time. It's kind of like Jared, what you were saying with about how you know you really love. There's some Alan Moore comics like Watchmen. You didn't put that on your list because you know maybe that's a little too dense for people just starting out.
Yeah, for sure. I remember Daniel Warren Johnson. He did that book, Murder Falcon. I really enjoyed that, but I haven't gotten into his Transformers at all. Transformers is a little bit before my time. I wasn't an '80s kid. I was born in the mid '90s, so Transformers wasn't as big, I guess, for my generation. But just speaking for the main Transformers run that's happening right now, the artwork, it's just classic Daniel Warren Johnson, and I mean, it's worth a read just for that. It's yeah, so maybe I'll get into it one day.
It's I would highly recommend, and really just and actually I think three out of my five picks are in the Energon universe. So we'll be able to talk more about it as we go. But there's just so many great writers. It's a good a good universe to be in. All right, and next,
Yeah,
what's
I
this?
uh,
What
I
am I
pretty
looking
much
at?
put I pretty much put any Brubaker Phillips book. You can't really go wrong with that partnership. But I thought for the purposes of this topic, the Reckless graphic novels that they did, I think there's 4 or 5 of them. Are probably best suited for this conversation. So the books, they're just great pulpy fun, plenty of violence, snappy plotting, characters, and they're standalone, like I said, so you don't need to do any homework either, which is good. So I think with these books, or really any books that this pair have done together, it's probably the closest experience you can get to reading a movie. And what I mean by that is that the plot is always moving. There just seems to be revelations at every page turn, and there's no wasted space. Just for me, I don't think I've ever been bored reading one of their books where I'm just waiting for them to hurry up and start with the plot. I mean, it's just main plot all the time. Um, and I think these books, for people that have read a few, have a few under their belt, and they're confident enough to be maybe introduced to narration, inner monologues, regular setting changes. This would be a good book. Kind of trying to put this into words, but kind of like the next level of their education, I guess, reading these, because when it comes to narration, it's a bit hard sometimes for new readers to understand how it works. Like there's inverted commas sometimes, so that means that they're actually speaking. When there's no inverted commas, it's narration. You know what I mean? So it can be a little bit confusing for new readers, but once you get the hang of the comics language, I guess you could say, these are quality stories to jump in on.
And you said that it's kind of like a fun vibe to them. It's I don't know, but also I'm assuming from the hatchet, somewhat gritty. You said pulpy. Is that
Yeah.
what you said?
Yeah, very pulpy. I think with these Reckless in particular, they're really throwing back to the old kind of pulp novels from, I don't know, 80 years ago or something like that, which I haven't read to be honest. But for this, it's just yeah, it's just good fun. There's always some sort of mystery involved, and the main character here with the hatchet, as you say, just kind of bumped from person to person trying to get through it. Kind of like Big
Yeah.
Lebowski, but kind of thing. Yeah, I just recommend it, and they're pretty affordable as well. So they're all graphic novels. They don't come out in issues. They just come out as one big graphic novel, and really easy to jump into.
Bert, so we got Bert, the writer of Essential, in the chat. I think you've
Mhm.
seen. So yeah, we talked about that. You've seen my interview with him. He's saying it's very noir and
Yeah,
crime feely, which I enjoy stuff like that. He also says the comics that got him started as an adult were Revival, Saga, and Watchmen. I've read some of Saga, and I really liked it. And I think maybe that was one that I was reading through Hoopla or something, and or maybe yeah, it must have been Hoopla, and somehow I ended up getting off track. And then Watchmen, of course, is a classic. Anything Alan Moore, I really enjoy all that, including Swamp Thing, even though I was kind of didn't love how that turned out for Alec Holland. Um, and then Revival. Have you heard of Revival or Saga, Jared?
yeah, I've heard of Saga. Same writer, Brian K. Vaughan, is for my next pick, which we'll get to in a second. Love Saga. Caught up to about the midway point where they went on that big hiatus. I haven't read anything past that. Revival, I've never heard of. And Watchmen, I mean, if you want to learn how to read comics, just that's quite a heavy pull to jump into for sure with that 9 panel grid.
Yeah, all those
But yeah, I
tiny
mean
little.
that's just a classic story. I mean, you can't go wrong with Alan Moore really in general. But yeah, Revival I've never heard of at all. So
Well, he says they're making
it,
it into a sci-fi show, so maybe that's one of those
uh,
ones that I'll get into. I always feel like I'm getting into it backwards if I start from other media and then get into the comic, but I do that sometimes.
I think that's the best way to do it because I feel like if you read the original, you just kind of the movie or the TV show just doesn't really hold up to it. Uh, so
Actually,
I
yeah,
feel
that's a
like
great point. If you
yeah.
know that the book is going to be better, save the best for last.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like whenever I read a book and then watch the movie, I'm just judging it the whole time because it's not what it was like. And so you just kind
Yeah.
of remove that if you just watch the adaptation first, like you did with Sweet Tooth. I think that's what you said before I cut out.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I watched a little bit of that, and and so just to go back to that for 1 second, because I was curious. Is it as bleak as it seemed in the show, or is there more? Um, is it a hopeful kind of story? What's it like?
For what revival? Oh, for Sweet
No,
Tooth, you
Sweet
mean?
Tooth.
Oh, Sweet Tooth.
Yeah.
I can't. I don't know. I haven't watched the show, but it looks like it wouldn't be as edgy as the actual book. The book can be pretty hardcore sometimes. Um, yeah, and I think a lot of that is to do with the art as well. If you're familiar with Jeff Lemire's art, it's really off kilter and very expressive. But yeah, I'm not sure about the show. I never got into that.
All right. Well, yeah, I don't. I would have to watch more of it to see if I can recommend it. At this point, I can't comfortably recommend that you spend your time on it, especially not if you have the Netflix with ads. Where you?
Oh yeah, just read Sweet Tooth. Just read it because I mean it's. I think they recently released it all in one for about. I'm not sure how much USD it would be. Probably about $50, and you're getting a
Okay.
great story there.
Well, next up, we got Transformers. We talked about it, and yeah. So this is one where I feel like it is very fun, but at the same time, Daniel Warren Johnson is like he's such a good writer, and they're really up against it. It's like the Transformers. It feels like everything's always going wrong for them, but at the same time, it's it is really enjoyable. The art. So I love Daniel Warren Johnson's art. He was, I think, the first volume, first few issues, and and it was great. And he's the one who really set the tone. But then Jorge Corona came on, and he is incredible. Like the amount of life that he brings to these mechanical robotic characters, it's amazing. They've got a very they feel just very organic, I guess. And one of the things about this one that makes it the most fun, I'm not exactly an 80s kid, but I do remember enough about the Transformers to where I did not expect to read a Transformers comic book and have a an enormous robot like smash a paratrooper between his hands like a bug. And so that was just like took me totally off guard, and it is incredibly violent. I mean, there's one I think usually Starscream, I think being very like he's holding some guy talking about how squishy he is, and then he squishes him. Um, then like Optimus Prime rips somebody's arm off and beats them to death with their own arm. There's a scene where the Decepticons like they've got some guy who they need parts from him for something, and then they all just like close in on him and take him to pieces. It's like very that part almost had like a horror vibe. I guess I'm just throwing out a bunch of scenes just because I feel like it was not what I expected. It's very not a little children's cartoon comic, I'll say. Um, have you read anything by Daniel Warren Johnson?
Yeah, I've read Murder Falcon. That was a
Oh
great
yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
thought we had talked about that earlier.
No, that's right.
Um,
I do really like to hear that they've changed artists and there doesn't seem to be much steam lost there because I mean, especially if you read the big two, I mean, sometimes it can change an artist in the issue itself, let alone the
yeah,
run. So that's a credit to Jorge Corona, who I'm familiar with as well. So it's good that he's been able to pick up the torch there.
I mean, it is. He's probably my favorite. He's got to be up there in like my top five artists right
Mm.
now. He's so good, and the expressions that he gets in there, the worlds looks great, and I can only imagine that that makes it easier when you're not having to write and do the art. But that's so impressive, and I'm so jealous of people like that who can do that, where they can go out there and just such a great do such great writing and then turn around and be the person who illustrates it too. It doesn't seem fair, but I guess life is not fair.
He also has a YouTube channel where he goes through a lot of his processes as well. So if
Oh, I didn't know that.
if you want to get a little bit of behind the scenes or yeah, just type in his name into YouTube and he's got quite a few videos. I'm not sure whether he's uploaded recently, but he goes into his process and kind of does a director's commentary for Transformers #1 at least.
One time I sent him an email once. He was nice enough. He was nice
Whoa.
enough to answer me back. I was like, "Hey, man, you want to come? You want to come on my YouTube channel? I got like 14 subscribers." Because I figure, you got to ask. What if,
Yeah.
for all I know, he's just sitting there saying, "Man, I got nothing to do today. I wish, gosh, if only there was just some random person I could talk to for an hour, but have it be on camera." Um, but no,
What did
he
he
was very
say?
nice though.
I
Yeah, he
remember
just said, he said with all the trade shows and everything he's doing, he's just,
yeah.
very busy. Um, what I mean, honestly, more than I expected, because I feel like for most people, it'd just be probably radio silence. I mean, when you're
Yeah.
that
The
busy.
the highest profile reply I ever got was Cliff Chang, who's a DC artist. He did Paper Girls with Brian K. Vaughan. Like, he's great. Because I was looking for people to do covers for Howie the Hellhound, and yeah, he said he was a DC exclusive, so it put me down. He put me down quite well. But yeah,
Oh,
shout out
okay.
to Cliff.
Well, what did you? I don't know. Did you get end up getting people to do other covers?
Yeah, we got I think two other covers made. One of them was
Are those
by
all available on Gumroad, or are those lost? Are those like now collector's items?
no, you can buy them from the Scout Comics website, I believe, still, if you
Oh,
want a
okay.
physical copy. Yeah, but digitally, I mean, it doesn't really matter what cover it is. So yeah, there were three covers we had to do, but definitely not at Cliff Chang's level. That would have been a dream. He's
Next
great.
for your next.
Yeah,
Are you
we'll see.
working on a comic right now?
Um, kind of on and off, but yeah, I'm a lot more focused on career at the moment.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You gotta balance a
Times are
lot of
tough out there.
things.
Times are tough out there.
That's right. Hopefully, hopefully we're about to take a big turn for the better. So you can that's what people need to really understand is like when the economy is not good, our comics might suffer.
Definitely.
All right, here's one that had a show for a little while.
Yeah, one season I think. I watched a
Yeah.
few episodes of this. Wasn't a fan, to be honest. But the book, I mean, I think you could probably say that this is my favorite series of all time. I think it was
Okay.
from where I was at when I read it. I think it was, I don't know, maybe 2017, 2018. Um, yeah, I mean, this is a classic story. If you don't know, all of the men in the world get wiped out, and we don't know why, except for this one loser and his monkey. Yorick, he's a Bachelor of Arts major. It's written by
The
Brian K.
monkey?
Vaughan. No, the monkey's just kind of his sidekick, who's a guy as well. So they're pretty much the only two men left in the world. And then the world obviously just it goes to shit, kind of post-apocalyptic kind of story. But I feel like with this was done. This is quite an old series too. I think it started around 2006, seven. Um, you may notice this if you read the book, but the way he writes his characters, those kind of neurotic characters that are always just making jokes and like nothing is ever serious that you see a lot in media these days.
Hmm.
How everyone's always just kind of weird and off kilter. I feel like
Like
that kind
the
of
DCEU Ezra Miller
yeah,
Flash.
yeah, that kind of thing. It's just an animated series. I feel like you can't go 2 seconds without a joke. But I feel like that kind of style of writing kind of started here. But the good thing about this series is it's only reserved for one character instead of every character. I'm kind of just venting my frustrations about current media, to be honest. But yeah, the story a lot like Sweet Tooth. It's kind of a road trip with a few characters trying to figure out what the hell happened to the world and how they can fix it. Um, but yeah, the book itself it's just a great book. I mean, that's really all there is to it. And it's not typically hard to read, except for maybe the first issue. I think I'll warn readers about that. Maybe read the first issue twice because it kind of introduces every player in the whole series in one issue, and plus a post-apocalyptic kind of situation. But yeah, if you're looking for great characters, great art, and a complete story, if you want to challenge yourself by trying to read a story that's I don't know 70 odd issues, this is at the top of my list. Saga as well is by Brian K. Vaughan. That's of a similar level here, but Why the Last Man for me, just personally, maybe because it's finished and Saga isn't. I mean, you can't really get much better.
And what about so the tone is very important to me. Um, there's like a lot of great comics that sometimes I just can't even get through them just because it's like so much of a downer. Would you say does this one feel like one of those? Where would you put it on the apocalyptometer when it comes from one being total despair, we're just waiting to die? No,
I'd
wait,
put it
that would be
if
10.
it's out of five. If it's out of five, I'd put it at a three, because the main character is so stupid. Like he's really funny, but he's so dumb, and just him navigating this world, getting kidnapped by women, like this like biker gang of women because they want to like you know take his DNA to make more children and just wacky situations like that. But it does get really serious when it wants to. So there's a really good balance, in my opinion. So
I
it's
like, yeah, I
it's
love it
it's not
when,
as depressing.
yeah, I love it when you, because I like to read serious things, but it is nice when it doesn't just feel like it's always just, um, you just kind of have to know how to navigate. I think everything needs to, there needs to be some variation. You know, you don't want it to just be always a bummer, but just like you don't want it to always be action either. You know?
Yeah, and that's what I mean when I was saying how in a lot of shows or books these days, everyone's making a joke. Everyone kind of has the same voice,
Yeah,
but for this book, they're real characters, and it sucks to say, but you don't get that a lot as much in books these days, or really, it's just hard to find a good book that'll grab you for 70 odd issues over a, I don't know, 8 year run or whatever it was.
yeah.
This is a really impressive book. I feel like it gets a bit forgotten because of Saga, because Saga just exploded. But a lot of the DNA of Saga is in this book here.
Well, I'm gonna have to read this one because I didn't realize that there was some humor to it. This is one that I don't think that I ever even. It may have been that back when I was, maybe it was available on Comixology or something, when I was on Comixology Unlimited. For some reason, I think when you have all those comics available to you, it's like I almost feel like I end up reading less comics than when I'm just having to pick out the ones that I want to read because it's like, oh, I could read this one, but what about this one? If I'm reading that one, then I can't read this one. Next thing you know, it's like you just, you know what? I think I'm out of time. I just spent 30 minutes here looking at all the different comics I could read. Now I don't have time to read any of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of different editions that you can get. A lot of affordable versions, like the paperbacks. I have the deluxe editions, which are these hardcovers, and they have the scripts, a script for a random issue at the back of each one. And that's actually how I learned how to format a
Oh, that's
script.
cool.
So I pretty much, when I was writing a script, had the back of one of the Why the Last Man's next to me while I was trying to figure out, you know,
Like the
how do I,
formatting
how
and
do I,
stuff.
yeah, how do I call out where there's a page break, and where there's a cut to another character screaming or whatever. Just how to
Yeah.
get that language so you can actually convey what's happening to the artist that you're working with. So yeah, it'll always have a special place in my heart. Why the Last Man?
All right. Well, my next one is back in the Energon universe. We'll be leaving the Energon universe after this one. But I and so this was really just basically I just figured I have to pick one because there's so many of the GI Joe books. I'm not just I did, but I wouldn't want to do all of them. So I just picked the most fun. Every single one of them. Destro is like the only one I feel like that maybe wasn't super awesome. I mean, it was good though. But like Scarlet was Kelly Thompson wrote. It was really good. Um, there's just so many great comic. Duke was really good, but Cobra Commander is just such a wild story. It's like Cobra Commander to me, growing up as a kid, he was just that guy with that high pitched voice. He kind of just seemed like a guy who just got beat up by the Transformers all the time. And in this comic, that's just not him. It's got all the guys. I remember having the toys. The toys, unfortunately, all had some like things about him that weren't great. Like there was Globulus or whatever, the guy with the big snake tail. His snake tail was this weird rubbery thing that had like a wire hanger going through the tail that broke. Destro had like a stupid cape, um, but none of that is in the comics. You just have really very violent, like visually violent things happening. It's a very cool story. It's not none of the comics that I've mentioned, none of the ones in the Energon universe are literary. They're very much it's just about a fun story with fun characters and uh, great plots. But it's a fun one, and he goes he's kind of like an anti-hero in it, even though obviously he's the big villain usually. but but you get to see him go up against some people where you're not upset that he takes them apart, and it's a lot of fun. Jared, did I lose you again?
No, I just honestly have nothing to say because I know nothing about GI Joe.
You know nothing
But
about GI Joe?
no,
You
well,
know what? You
other
know
than
why
the
you
name.
don't?
Why?
It's because by the time they got to the 90s, they stopped making the little I don't know what the size of those toys were. They used to have the greatest toys with all these like cool joints. Um, they did have the little rubber bands in their pelvis that would break. But other than that, they had the greatest toys. And in the 90s, I think that's when they didn't have that anymore. And if it weren't for
Yeah,
the toys,
video
I didn't
games.
watch the show or anything much as a kid. I mainly just had the toys, and that was what got me into it. So once that was gone, I guess you wouldn't have really had any reason to know about GI Joes.
Yeah, when I was coming up as a kid, that's when video games really exploded, like Pokemon and all
Yeah,
that. Actually, playing with toys wasn't really a thing, um, for me anyway.
yeah,
When I was getting to that age, like 8 or whatever the the market is for GI Joe
yeah.
toys, whatever they were.
It's so
So
funny.
yeah,
Yeah, I guess everybody plays video games now,
yeah,
and we played some. We played like Donkey Kong and stuff when I was a kid. And obviously, I mean, I grew up and had PlayStations and Xboxes and stuff like that. And so eventually, obviously, I was just playing video games with everybody else. But when I was a kid, I remember like me and my friend, we each had just like enormous bins, or like when we would meet at a family friend of mine, we would meet at his aunt's house, and he would bring like a duffel bag full of action figures and like Street Sharks and Transformers, all this different stuff. But yeah, these days I've gotten my kids some action figures, and occasionally I'll step on one of them, but I don't think they actually play with them.
yeah. It's kind of a lost art. I think people born in the '80s or that grew up in the '80s are kind of keeping the toy kind of the toy market alive at this point, really. But
Well,
other
they
than
yeah,
Lego,
they are, and it's like and now all the toys they don't even get they don't even get played with. There was a great Saturday Night Live skit they did with where some new Star Wars toys came out, and it was like an old school commercial where the kid gets the toy and they're like, yeah, and playing with the toy, and then an adult comes, he's like, you really should leave that in the box.
yeah,
Because all the adults are just thinking about how it's like a collector's item. And yeah, that is most of the toys that you see these days are on the back of somebody's shelf, and they never get played with and weren't even designed to be played with. I mean, like we were at Target the other day. They have action figures. They're like $30. Can't pay $30 for something and actually play with it.
yeah. I mean, the only real I buy. Well, my girlfriend and I are really into Dragon Ball Z, and we kind of buy
Hmm.
statues of that. I think the most I paid for one was like $150. But they're not designed to be played with. They're designed to be in a shelf. But that's it for me. Yeah, never really got into action figures, but we've been
And
getting
so
into those
Dragon Ball
Dragon Ball Z
Z,
things.
do you read Dragon Ball Z, watch it, or
Yeah,
both?
I almost had Dragon Ball Z on this list. It was a manga originally, which is just a Japanese
Yeah.
comic book, but most people know it from the anime. But I thought I'd just keep it to Western stuff for this time. But yeah, definitely, yeah, read Dragon Ball. I mean, it maybe it's my generation, but it's a great story. Let's make that number 6 for mine.
Yeah.
Just
Well,
read
look,
Dragon Ball.
I'm glad you said it, because I'm almost wondering, uh, because you've had some more serious, more almost literary kind of titles, and I was thinking, I don't know, like, could I even recommend to Jared to read Cobra Commander? But if you like fun stories like Dragon Ball, not to say that Cobra Commander is the same, but it is very fun, and there is like so like this gosh, what's his name? Nemesis something or other. There's this guy, and he um basically he can fly, and he like flies somebody up in the air and kills them. So it's got some action that I felt like maybe would appeal to you. And then obviously just all the GI Joe stories. They're just very. If you like any kind of like, basically like maybe uh, Captain America Civil War type intrigue and spy stuff. It's all very. It's got a lot of that feel to it. But Cobra Commander is just 5 issues. It's a mini series. You can read it and then you can be done. And the art is great. You can see here one of the covers. It looks really
Yeah,
good.
I've got one question. Do you with this Energon universe? Do you actually have to read everything? Like, will you miss something if you
No,
jump
so
into
it's
Cobra
it.
Commander?
There are little like Easter egg type things that people would who would recognize it maybe would enjoy, but it's very much like you don't have to do any homework if you just want to read Cobra Commander and never do anything else. You can enjoy it on its own. You can enjoy um, reading GI Joe. You can enjoy reading Transformers. You can read Void Rivals, and all of them so far have been separate. Of course, today was Free Comic Book Day, and the Quintessent War is going to be gearing up. I think in November things are gonna they're gonna have their first big crossover. So that may be somewhat that may change somewhat. I doubt it'll change too much because I think they've done a really good job of keeping things standalone so far. And the great thing about it, so they've got the license from Hasbro or whoever, and I think they've got it for at least another 5 years or so. And so far, everything is really good, and hopefully, it'll keep doing well. Because I love Image, and I love for them to have success and to be out there putting out some of the kinds of stories that maybe um, we don't get to see so often from other publishers. So, what am I looking at here? I hope I grabbed the right cover here.
Sure. Yeah, it actually took me a while to realize what this was, but this is actually my pick.
Yeah.
So this is
And I grabbed I couldn't find a good one. I was
yeah,
like, man, I hope this is right.
yeah. I've never seen that image before actually, but this is Huck by Mark Millar and Raphael Albuquerque. So I picked this. It's not one of my favorite stories. I'll just come out and say that. I mean, Mark Millar's very hit and miss. He's usually miss, to be honest. But
That's
what he
fair.
does what he does is he gets really good artists on his books, probably because they sell, and then the artists get a lot of money. So when I was starting to make my first short story, For the Love of the Game, I was like, oh, how many panels do I even put on a page? You know, I don't want people to be cramped or uh, not know what was going on. So I was flipping through some of the trades that I had, and Huck was one of them. Don't ask me why I bought it. But if you read the book, there's, I think there was maybe one page out of its whole 6 issue run that had more than 6 panels. Which you read comics, it doesn't matter whether they're modern or old. That's a pretty big feat. So what you get when you have 4 panels on a page, 5 panels on a page, is really cinematics and a lot of space. Um, and it also makes it a quicker read as well, if that makes sense. If you read Watchmen, which was shouted out before, which has 9 panels, it can take you like 10 minutes to read 2 pages of that book. But for this one, you can just flip right through and get the information you need. It doesn't cramp the page, and it conveys all the information that's really required for a story like this, which isn't particularly deep. Like I said, it's not the best book in the world, but for me, it's kind of a selfish pick.
And it's just
Because
about a really big,
yeah,
strong guy delivering chocolates.
basically, yeah, it's basically a Superman kind of dumb character that just wants to do a lot of good, and then you find out where he came from, lab experiment, blah blah blah. It doesn't really matter. But I feel like if you're jumping into comic books, this is a good one to jump into because it's just so easy to read. And Raphael
And it's not
Albuquerque,
that
I mean,
great,
he's a
so you
great
won't be
artist.
disappointed by whatever you read next.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just for this list, I was like, I don't want. What would I give someone if I don't want them to be offended? Uh,
Did you
if
read
I give
Kick
them,
Ass?
no, I haven't read Kick Ass. I love the movie when I was young, younger. Um, But yeah, Kick Ass might have been a better pick for this. But this is just all I had to be honest. There's one call out that I'll make though, which is just a pet peeve of mine. They introduced two characters in a row back to back that look exactly the same. Like they're both red-headed women with blue eyes, and it took me nearly the whole run to realize they were different people. So that's a big no-no for me.
Yeah,
So just keep that in
that is
mind.
something that I don't know that I would have thought of that, but when you mention it, it seems like that would be pretty obvious that you would not do that.
Yeah,
Or that
like
you
at
would even
least
I would think in terms of character design, that would just be like a best practice to not ever have two
yeah.
characters that look that similar.
Yeah, I think I've had to deal with that in some of the books I've worked on. I'm like, these characters look exactly the same. People aren't going to know who they're looking at. But I mean, that's just a really small thing. But I just remember having that moment when I was first reading. I was like, wait, what? Like they're two different people. Um, but maybe give them a scar or something. If you're going to
Yeah.
keep them the same color hair and the same color eyes, maybe give them something. But yeah, but overall, the book is just a really easy read. You'll flip through this in about half an hour, and you'll be mostly satisfied by reading it. But I thought I'd just give it a shout out because it was really important step for me to learn. The pacing of comic books. If you really want to convey as much information as you can in kind of a streamlined way, which kind of doesn't really make sense, but hopefully you understand what I'm saying. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, read the book. It's a quick read, just like Sweet Tooth is. You'll fly through this thing, and it's mostly a good story for the most part.
So you know what, we'll just imagine that this image gets pushed over to the side a little bit and then Dragon Ball is next to it. So it's kind of like we'll give them a two for it's this or Dragon Ball.
Yeah, this or Dragon Ball. Maybe lean before towards Dragon Ball. But it is a Japanese comic book, so that's
Yeah,
why I
you know,
didn't
my
want to.
problem with Dragon
Yeah,
Ball, I don't know what's up with their publisher, but the whole book was printed backwards.
yeah, that's just how it is in Japan. They
I'm
just
kidding.
read it from right to left.
Yeah.
Look, I know you're joking, but a lot of people actually don't know that. So if you're reading a manga on the app or whatever, if you swipe the other way, it's like, oh, just to let
Yeah.
you know, you swiped the wrong way. Or sometimes if you have the physical, it'll actually have an arrow saying "read this way, dummy." Try and
I got
yeah,
my son a Pokemon book
yeah.
and I had to show him like it's like, okay, you know, he's young, but I feel like he's old enough to where it's not gonna like throw off his whole education to read backwards occasionally. I think it'll help him, you know, get some new brain cells firing. But
The left
it
side of the
is a
brain.
different experience.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is. But once you've read a few,
Well, then
yeah,
again, you're in Australia, you're reading them all upside down, right?
yeah, for sure. And just like our toilets, they just go the other way.
Right.
So our manga actually goes left to right, but our comic books go right to left because we're in
Yeah.
the southern hemisphere.
Okay, so finally out of the Energon universe, and my next two are in the Absolute universe. Absolute Batman is just one that's really fun. The idea was let's put these people in like an underdog universe. DC comics are all about, or not, the main DC continuity is all about this so-called Superman energy, which they never have explained that super well, but um, it's supposed to be everything is hopeful. And then in this energy or in this universe, Dark Side has sort of taken over, and this universe is powered by dark side universe energy. So it's supposed to be more oppressive, and so all the heroes are supposed to be underdogs. That doesn't really seem to be the case to me. Uh, Batman, for example, he's not a billionaire, but he still has crazy tools and gadgets. He's got his mom didn't die. I mean, you know, if, I think that the OG Batman would definitely feel like Absolute Batman got it better in that way. And but it's super fun. It's a big beefy Batman. This is my favorite this is my favorite cover, and my gosh, I can't remember who did this cover. It's I'll have to add it in the description or something. But this is my favorite cover because he just looks so chunky in it. Um, it is a lot of people were kind of worried they didn't like the bat logo on the thing. They didn't like that it could be an axe. I was definitely a little skeptical about it, but it turned out to be really good. It's very fun. It's super violent. It's almost like Scott Snyder is like, I don't know, it's almost like he's trolling everybody because the things Batman does to people and then they don't die, it's just hilarious. I mean, like Batman, those ears on his head are knives. Batman stabs somebody about like this far back into their head with one of those and then throws him in the water and tosses him a life preserver because he's still alive. Um, but if you don't mind suspending your disbelief, it is it's a fun comic.
Yeah, well, why would you choose this for a new reader other than, sorry, over something like Batman
Well,
Year
so
One?
actually that's a great question. I'm glad you mentioned that. So first of all, I think one of the best parts, I mean, so DC in general, they're doing two really smart things. First of all, they've got their new, like, basically, they're, I can't remember what they're called, but they're basically almost like manga style DC comics where you can get like these iconic storylines in a little book. So there's other options like that for people who are new. If they want to do that, they're like really cheap. You can for like $10 and you can get up to speed on a lot of great Batman stories. But Absolute Batman, he's totally new. So if you're somebody who wants to get into Batman, but you feel like if you get into Batman right now, it's going to be like, you're going to be reading Hush 2. And on top of the fact that it's new to you, everybody apparently is confused by this storyline anyway. So you don't want to jump in right away with that. But of course, like I say, there are other options, but this one, he's so fun. I think everybody is reading it right now, so you have other people you can talk to about it, but at the same time, you can get up to speed and feel like, Absolute Batman as well as anybody else does because he's so new, and you can have that feeling a little quicker of being able to talk to other people at the comic book store or whatever, about Absolute Batman.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it looks like Scott Snyder has really outdone himself with his edginess. I didn't think he could go any more edgy than Dark
Well, I
Knight's
got to
Metal,
tell
but
you,
it seems like he has.
I'm I so I remember reading Batman Who Laughs and thinking, um, it wasn't bad. It just wasn't for me. There were definitely some signs of like he's always got like these flashes of brilliance, like the kinds of things he does. They're almost like sometimes he'll have like these set pieces. Like there was this one scene in where this guy is fighting Batman, not Absolute Batman. This is in Batman Who Laughs, and they're fighting in this like how sometimes they'll be moving a house on a truck and it'll be like a wide load. Well, they're fighting
Hmm.
on one of these houses. So I think he's always had a lot of, he's clearly a skilled writer, but yeah, usually everything is so grim and dark. And Absolute Batman, though, surprisingly, in spite of the fact that he does seem a little angsty, kind of like Absolute Superman, in spite of the fact that he's just beating everybody mercilessly, it's actually very fun. And it almost like feels edgy, doesn't even feel like the right word just because it's so fun. When I think of edgy, and this maybe is just me, but I think it's more like everything is grim. It's like Zack Snyder, Snyderverse type stuff, and black and white too. Um,
Mm.
but there definitely is a lot of it is edgy. I mean, like I say, the guy's basically killing everybody he comes across, and then Scott Snyder just refuses to let them die.
Yeah, it just seems like an interesting series. I've never read it, especially because this guy Scott Snyder has done so much Batman already, and then he's still got some more stuff to say about the character. I know he's technically a different character, but yeah, yeah, maybe
It
I'll
is
give it
a
a go.
very
Like
different
when the
character,
trades come out.
and in fact, like, and this is one thing that I don't feel like it's almost like they're trying not to step on any toes, or they're worried about marketing, or I don't know what. But to me, everybody in the Absolute Universe, this idea that it's going to be an underdog universe and it's going to take the essence of Superman and the essence of Batman and see, well, what would they be like in a world where they have less advantages. They don't, to me, they don't really feel like they're doing that because they really, it's kind of like they just said, let's put them in a universe that's somehow supposed to be worse, but just use that as an excuse to give them cool stuff, like different cool stuff. Because Superman's got some AI suit. Um, Batman, he's got a giant like earth mover Batmobile. I mean, the thing is, if you think of a dump, it's like 10 times bigger than a dump truck. Like, um, you'd have nowhere to put it. He'd have no way to have the money to do it. Um, so you have to just read it as like, I want to have fun. I want to, if you like, if the idea of getting into comics, a part of that for you, if you're, um, you have a lot of friends who are into comics and you want to be able to like have those conversations with them, I think that's a good reason for it. But it is a lot of fun. And to me, one of the things that Batman has been missing for a while, partly, and partly it's Scott Snyder's fault, is that Batman just has not been fun for a while. He's just been, very, I mean, it's not always like Snyderverse type Batman, but in general, I just don't feel like it's been a super fun comic. And this is really, it's Batman in a way you haven't seen him before. And I don't just mean because he weighs 500 pounds.
Yeah, and the I guess there's one big thing that I saw about it was him punting some kid, having him fly in the air.
So that whole
Spoilers.
scene, I did a video about it because it was so crazy to me. And people refuse to accept that he's killing people and that Scott Snyder has just arranged the physics to where there's a glitch in the matrix and he won't let it happen. He he punts a baby and or a 3-year-old, I don't know, punts a little kid into the ocean. That kid's gonna drown. I mean, the kid's like in a little inner tube. He beats some other dude, throws him into the ocean, but throws him a life preserver. The woman just jumps in and he throws her life preserver. Then the big bad guy, Black Mass, he beats his brains out with a bowling ball. Anybody would be dead. And
Wow.
people are like, well, no, that he's wearing that helmet. It's not a helmet, it's a virtual reality headset. I mean, it's like an augmented reality thing. It's not a helmet. And then he puts his, like I said, puts about, you know, 4 inches, 5 inches of bat ear into this guy's brain, and the guy's dead. But then he throws him. It's like every time he's throwing the life the life preserver, and it's hilarious to me. And
Yeah,
you
it
so
does
you
sound
have to
like
be
a
able
funny
to
gag.
find that funny, or you won't enjoy it. Okay, we got another Batman from you, and I don't know what this made. Was this like a variant cover, or do you recognize this?
Um, I'm not sure. I think this came out in the '90s. So I mean, I wasn't really reading comics back then. I probably wasn't even alive when this came out. But I'm not sure. Like I've got the deluxe version next to me, so I don't know what the original cover was like. To be honest, it's a nice piece of art though.
It
So
is nice. Yeah, it's kind of got that Bruce Timm feel.
well, yeah. Well, this book it's called Batman Mad Love, and it's written by Paul Dini and drawn by Bruce Timm.
Oh,
So
okay. Well, and
this is
he created Harley Quinn, right? So
yeah,
I guess
exactly.
that
So
makes
Paul
sense.
Dini created Harley Quinn. This is set in the Batman the Animated Series universe, and a lot of people don't know because she's so popular now. But Harley Quinn was actually introduced in this series. She wasn't a comic book character first, but this goes into her backstory about how she became a psychologist and how she hooked up with the Joker, and it is pretty much an episode of Batman the Animated Series, but in comic book form. So this is about 50 pages long. I mean, the Bruce Timm art. It's too bad I don't have my camera on because I've got the deluxe edition next to me. I could flip through it, but I mean, it looks just like the show. And Paul Dini as a writer, he's the guy, the animated series guy. So whenever you see his name in the opening credits, you know you're going to get a good episode. And he created Harley Quinn as well. And I believe they actually adapted this story into an actual episode of the series, one of the later ones when they did the character redesign. But yeah, this is just if you're familiar with Batman the animated series, or if you're really familiar with any superhero animated series, this reads just like an episode. So you'll be able to jump in having never read any comic in your life and know what's going on. And it's just beautiful to look at. Because that Bruce Timm art, he never really became a comic book artist. So when he does dabble in, it's special. And this is a special book.
Yeah, I think he did something cool in one of those black and white specials too. Um,
Hmm.
but the nice thing about this, I think, for some people would be, I'm sure a lot of people miss the cartoon and maybe they haven't read this, and so they can get that feel back with an original story that they haven't that they aren't familiar with. Well, unless I guess unless they did do an episode based on it and then they saw that.
They did, yeah. And also, I have the deluxe edition, as I said, and because the book's so short, they needed to pack a lot of special features into it. So they pretty much have the story printed 3 times in this one deluxe, but it has little notes by Bruce Timm as he's drawing it. He's like, shout out, like, just so you know, colorist, make sure his eyes are this color and not this color. So if you're an aspiring artist, definitely pick it up, and yeah, you'll see the process. It goes through the whole book in pencil form, like layouts, and it's really interesting read.
What is this? A flare gun? This would be like a sawed off, like a way sawed off shotgun.
Yeah,
Oh,
you can't really kill people in this universe, so she just kind of shoots that gun, and a bunch of confetti comes out, and it
oh,
somehow knocks people out.
that
Yeah,
makes sense. Yeah, yeah, that's the problem. Cartoon Batman. If absolute Batman thinks it's hard for him to kill somebody, just yeah, cartoon Batman had it real tough.
yeah, but it does have a few little adult themes in there that you couldn't put on TV. But I mean, for the most part, it's all ages. It's an all ages book.
I do. I anything Bruce Tim, I feel like is
Oh
always going to
yeah.
be good.
Like his art is crazy. Speaking of crazy art, I'm interested to hear you talk about this.
Okay, yeah. So this is like maybe obviously, very still very new. Only 2 issues out so far, but I mean, I don't know. It's one of the best comics out in a while, and for it to be a DC comic actually using, maybe they're I'm sure Martian Manhunter they're willing to let people take more risks with than say Batman or Superman. But still, I mean, this is a guy who's often in the Justice League, and to see them do this is really it's crazy. It's the art. It's like every single thing that they do, every page, none of it is wasted. They're doing crazy things, even with you've probably heard about how you can like hold pages up to the light. I think that's going to be making it. I don't know how they're going to do the trade paperbacks and all that stuff, and have people still because there's some pretty. I mean, you really need to be able to have that element to be able to fully read the story. But I mean, it is like the most literary comic, but at the same time, super interesting, super well paced. Um, I can't say enough good things about it. The art is great, the lettering is great. There is I cannot think of any person whose job is not like they did everything to the fullest. There's no wasted space, no wasted anything. It's so good that I don't even know how to describe how good it is.
Yeah, it seems like this has a
Oh,
lot
and
of
in case
potential.
people are looking at this and are like, I don't know if I said it's absolute Martian Man,
Oh,
absolute Martian
thanks for that.
Manhunter, or I can't say the other version without because I don't have a little bleep, but yeah,
Yeah, I this seems like it's got the potential to be Martian Manhunter's version of Vision when Tom King did Vision a few years ago, about how it took this character who isn't really well known and because they weren't well known, they were able to take a lot of risks and put them in this setting that you wouldn't see Batman or Superman in. So this seems like it's got like an Image Comics kind of approach, but brought into DC. So this is probably the most interesting book for me that I actually want to check out. That's being released at the moment.
I mean, it's great, and so the influences like Thomas Pynchon and stuff like that, the people who he was influenced by, you feel it. I mean, it's very almost surreal in some aspects, but at the same time, though, it makes sense. It kind of feels like a puzzle where you're sort of trying to figure it out what's going on. A lot of fun fan theories to engage in if you're into that sort of thing, and it it's funny you mentioned Vision, and I that's one of the things like in the Marvel movies, I always felt like the less known the character was, the more I would probably like the movie. Like Ant-Man, nobody cared about Ant-Man, so they let him go and make this like really funny movie. And I thought Ant-Man was great. And uh nobody cared about Doctor Strange. And so it's like that was one of the best, and then the sequel was even better. Um and so I think you're right. I think that they let him take an even bigger swing, and it paid off big time.
Yeah, this artist Denny's Camp. He's quite new to the comics kind of world, but
Well, he's
he's
the
doing the
writer.
ultimates.
Who's the artist?
The artist is, I got it in front of me here. Let's see, Javier Rodriguez.
Yes. I mean, he's got to be maybe the my number one, like in terms of like actual comics that I've read over the past couple of years. He's definitely at least in the top, probably two. I mean, he's
Yeah,
really really good.
I'm flipping through his credits. He's worked a lot with Marvel, but probably uh, the highest profile is Daredevil with Mark Waid. But even then, he wasn't the main artist on that. That was someone else. But yeah,
I think he
I'm
is going to
interested
be
to
in
read this for
demand
sure.
now.
Yeah, yeah, it's
And the
really got that
interesting
kind of.
thing that you don't really know is so when I first heard about this, I thought it was, is this going to be actually Martian Manhunter? Like, I don't know, like from a metaphysical point of view, like how much can you change somebody before it's not them anymore? Like the idea, the way that it was originally explained and the way that it kind of comes off in the comics so far, but it's hard to know exactly what's going on, is you've got this guy, John Jones, and all of a sudden this alien consciousness is invading his mind. And I'm thinking, I always knew that it could be great because just as far as like if you're going to take the story on its own, then it can be great. But I was just thinking, is that going to be a Martian Manhunter story? Like if you told me, oh, we're doing a story and it's about a guy named Clark Kent, but then this alien consciousness invades him and all of a sudden he can like fly and has heat vision and stuff. That's just like that's weird. That's all of a sudden that's not what I think of. Somehow splitting the character up like that seemed strange to me. At this point, I don't care. The comic is so good, it doesn't matter. But it's gonna. I mean, it's the most popular Martian Manhunter story probably ever, so it could have a pretty big effect on how people think of the character.
Yeah, it seems like, yeah, it's got that potential to be the definitive Martian Manhunter story, because I couldn't name you any other ones, to be honest. He's not
Yeah,
like, hey, you can rattle off a Batman Year One, a Wonder Woman, Dead Earth, that kind of thing. You can't really get that with Martian Manhunter. I'm only really familiar with him from the Justice League cartoon when I was a kid. So just to be
he
clear,
had.
you
There
don't
was
need
a
to know
really good
anything.
one. It wasn't very well. The illustrations weren't great,
Mm.
but it was by who is it? Somebody DeMatteis. I don't remember what his. It wasn't the more recent guy. But anyway, it was in the 80s, I think. And it was a pretty interesting story. But I mean, that came out forever ago, and I only read it because I was like interested in kind of reading some of these older Martian Manhunter comics just because this one was coming out. So, yeah, I would think this is going to be the one that people are going to be used to. And in general, I don't know. The Absolute Universe is so interesting to me because it just none of the characters really. It doesn't bother me. I'm not one of those people who gets super like upset that people change characters or anything like that. But at the same time, I don't necessarily love when they do that. Um, but the way that they've done the Absolute Universe, it doesn't bother me at all. And it'll be interesting, like, because I mean, I'm not reading any other Batman. I've been seeing. I really think the Hayden, the guy, the person who's doing the art for Absolute Wonder Woman, is um, doing a Batman comic. I think it's called Dark Patterns or something. It looks great, but I haven't read that. The only Batman I'm reading right now is actually Absolute Batman, and it'll be interesting to see. Like they're the ones that are really selling. It'll be interesting to see how that affects the overall DC universe.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, this absolute line just seems like what they want a Black Label to be.
Yeah.
Uh, it didn't really take off as far as I could see. But yeah, this
Well,
Martian
and it
Manhunter
is
book seems really
supposed to
interesting.
be like this is supposed to be basically like the Elseworlds universe. Dark Side basically took over the whole Elseworlds universe, and
Yeah.
so it is like that. Only somehow it feels a little more real because they've set it up to where Elseworlds always felt to me like just almost like elevated fan fiction or something. It's like totally just made up stories. Like Batman's a pirate, you know, or Batman's a vampire, and but with this, it feels like I don't know. It feels more connected to the actual universe, even though they're not the same. And I guess part of that is because they set the whole thing up and they're alluding to it, like in the Aquaman comic, they've shown that it looks like I don't know if Atlantis was transported to the absolute universe or something, but things are starting to happen there. Somehow that makes the stakes more real than just reading some comic where it's like, you know, Batman's in the apocalypse and he's got Joker's head in a jar. Um, those just the stakes didn't feel real as interesting stories, but not. It just obviously they're all fake, so it seems weird to say this, but it just didn't feel real.
Yeah, see what you mean.
Well, let's see. I think that was yeah, that's what we have for them. So you guys get out there and read some of these comics. I think that and don't forget Dragon Ball.
Yeah, the honorary number 6,
That's right.
Dragon Ball. Definitely read that or watch it.
Or yeah, both. Read it while you watch it.
Yeah, why not? I don't know how you'll go when it comes to the filler, but you'll figure it out.
Jared, can you tell everybody again just where they can find you and where they can find Howie the Hellhound?
Yeah, so you can find Howie the Hellhound and also my short story For the Love of the Game, which I mentioned during the Huck section. It's just on Gumroad. So if you just search Howie the Hellhound into Gumroad, it'll come up. We have the whole collection in there, all 5 issues for about $10, $8 or something like that. And I'm on Instagram as well, so just J Presswidge. If you want to follow me over there, happy to send over
And for
free
the
copies of digitals.
and can you just give I know For the Love of the Game's pretty short, but could you just
Hmm.
give a quick little rundown of that because I think that people who would be interested in the kind of comics we've been talking about um, might really find that one to be pretty intriguing.
Yeah, sure. Like you said, it's pretty short, so I'll try to try not to spoil the
no,
10-page
no
story. But
spoilers.
yeah, I mean, if you like Black Mirror, I definitely recommend picking paying the dollar or however much it is to read For the Love of the Game. So it's just like an 11
It's not a
page.
baseball comic.
Yeah, no, it's not. Maybe I should. Maybe it'll be the absolute version of that story. We'll make it a baseball story. Uh, if you're into Black Mirror or Tales of the Crypt, stuff like that, For the Love of the Game is kind of a sci-fi version of that. No dialogue, and it's got a really great artist on it called Sydney Teals, who used to work for DC back in the day, about 15 years ago. So, yeah, for $1 or $2 or however much it is, I think it's pretty worth it.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Jared. I hope you'll come back.
Yeah, thanks for having me.